The dust settled around Marcus Cole's boots as he dismounted his horse, surveying the desolate ranch that had been his home for the past 15 years. At 42, he'd grown accustomed to the silence, the endless horizon, and the company of cattle rather than people. His wife had left him a decade ago, unable to bear the isolation and his dedication to a failing ranch over their marriage. She'd wanted the city, children, a life filled with laughter and neighbors. He'd wanted this. Thousands of acres of stubborn Texas soil that refused to yield easily. The loneliness had become a familiar companion, something he'd learned to manage like a chronic ache. But lately, it had grown sharper, more insistent. He was tired of talking to his horses and hearing only the wind answer back. That morning, he'd driven into town for supplies when he overheard a conversation at the hardware store that would change everything. Two men in expensive suits stood near the lumber section, their voices carrying that particular brand of cruelty disguised as concern. The bank's being generous, giving her until Friday, one said. After that, we take the house, the car, everything. Should have thought about that before her worthless husband got himself killed, leaving her with all that debt and those brats to feed. Your sister always was the stupid one, marrying beneath her, the other replied with a laugh. Now she's got what? 6 kids? 7. And not a penny to her name. Should have come crawling back to us years ago. Marcus had paused, pretending to examine a box of nails while listening. The men continued their conversation, detailing how their sister's husband had died in a construction accident 8 months prior, leaving behind massive debts from a failed business venture. The insurance money had gone straight to creditors, and the widow, Sarah Thornton, had been struggling ever since. Her brothers, apparently men of means, had offered help with conditions so degrading she'd refused, choosing instead to work 3 jobs while her older children tried to help support the younger ones. Friday, she'll have no choice, one brother said with satisfaction. She'll sign over custody of those kids to us, we'll put them in boarding schools, get them away from her failed example, and she can go work as a maid or something. It's what she deserves for defying father's wishes about that marriage. Something in Marcus had snapped. He'd lived alone for so long, watching his ranch struggle, wondering what the point of it all was. Here was a woman fighting to keep her family together against impossible odds, while her own blood relatives schemed to tear them apart for spite and pride. He'd followed the brothers out to the parking lot, introduced himself, and made an offer that shocked even him as the words left his mouth. He'd pay off Sarah's debts in full, buy her house from the bank, and provide for her and the children. In exchange, they'd come live on his ranch. He needed help, honest work for honest pay, and they needed a home. The brothers, seeing an opportunity to rid themselves of an embarrassing family situation while saving their own money, had agreed immediately, giving him the address. Now, standing outside a small rundown house on the poor side of town, Marcus questioned his own sanity. What did a lonely rancher know about children? About being part of a family? But he'd made a promise, and he kept his promises. He knocked on the door. The woman who answered looked exhausted beyond her years, though he guessed she couldn't be more than 35. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her clothes hung loose on a too-thin frame. Behind her, he could see children of various ages, their faces reflecting a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Sarah Thornton. I'm Marcus Cole. Your brothers sent me. Fear flashed across her face, and she moved to close the door. I told them I won't give up my children. They can take everything else, but not my babies. Wait, Marcus said quickly, holding up his hands. I'm not here to take them. I'm here to help. May I come in and explain? She hesitated, then stepped aside. The living room was painfully clean but sparse, furniture worn but carefully maintained. 7 children ranged in age from what looked like 16 down to about 4, all watching him with those same wary eyes. Marcus explained his proposal as simply as he could. He'd paid off her debts that afternoon. All of them. The bank had already been contacted. Her house was no longer in foreclosure. But more than that, he was offering them a fresh start. His ranch was large but struggling because he couldn't manage it alone. He needed help with everything from mending fences to managing livestock to running the household. In exchange, they'd have a home, food, security, and wages for the older children who could work. I don't understand, Sarah said slowly. Why would you do this for strangers? Because I've spent 15 years alone on that ranch, wondering what I was working for, Marcus replied honestly. And because your brothers are cruel men who don't deserve the satisfaction of seeing you broken. And maybe because I heard you've been fighting like hell to keep your family together, and that's worth something in this world. The oldest child, a teenage boy with his father's build and his mother's eyes, spoke up. What's the catch? No catch. It's honest work for honest pay. The ranch is remote. Nearest neighbor is 12 miles away. It's hard work, and it's not glamorous. But it's yours if you want it. Sarah looked at her children, then back at Marcus. I don't know you. For all I know, this could be another trap. That's fair, Marcus acknowledged. Come see the ranch first. Bring all the kids. If you don't like it, you can stay in your house here, debt-free. I've already paid everything off. That's done regardless. But I think you'll find it's a good place, and I could really use the help. Something in his plain honesty seemed to reach her. They went that very afternoon. The children's excitement grew as they drove through the ranch gates, down the long drive lined with oak trees, and caught their first glimpse of the sprawling ranch house. It needed work, paint peeling, porch boards loose, but it was solid, spacious, and surrounded by beautiful land. There's 6 bedrooms upstairs, Marcus explained, suddenly nervous. Kitchen's big. Living room needs furniture, but I figured we could work on that. There's a library nobody uses, a den, and plenty of space. The children scattered to explore while Sarah walked through slowly, running her hands along walls and windowsills. When she returned to the kitchen where Marcus waited, there were tears in her eyes. Why? She asked again. Please, I need to understand. Because everybody deserves a chance, he said quietly. And because this house has been empty of life for too long. It needs the sound of children laughing. It needs a purpose. They moved in 3 days later. The first months were an adjustment. Marcus had forgotten how loud children could be, how chaotic, how wonderfully alive they made everything. The oldest boy, James, proved invaluable with the cattle. 16-year-old Emma took over the ranch's neglected bookkeeping and discovered they'd been hemorrhaging money on poor contracts for years. 14-year-old Michael showed an unexpected gift with horses. The younger ones, Lily, Thomas, Sophie, and little Grace, brought laughter and energy to every corner of the house. And Sarah. Sarah transformed everything. The house began to shine, not just from cleaning but from being genuinely cared for. She planted gardens, repaired what was broken, and cooked meals that reminded Marcus what it meant to sit at a table with family. She was fiercely protective of her children but gradually allowed herself to smile more, to relax into this new life. Marcus found himself watching her sometimes, amazed at her strength, her resilience, the gentle way she guided her children while letting them grow. He'd given them a home, but they'd given him something more precious, a reason to care about tomorrow. 6 months after they'd arrived, Sarah's brothers appeared at the ranch, demanding to see their sister. Marcus met them at the gate. She's happy here, he said flatly. You're not welcome. We're her family, one brother protested. We have rights. You gave up those rights when you tried to use her children as leverage, Marcus replied. Now leave. They tried to push past him, and that's when all 7 children appeared, ranging themselves protectively between the brothers and the house. James, nearly as tall as Marcus now and hardened by ranch work, stepped forward. You heard him. Leave. The brothers left, but not before making veiled threats about lawyers and custody. That evening, after the younger children were in bed, the older ones gathered in the living room with Marcus and Sarah. Emma spoke first. We've been talking, she said, glancing at her siblings. We know what those men might try to do. We know the law sometimes favors blood relatives, even awful ones. James continued. So we want you to marry our mother. Sarah gasped. James, you can't just. Stati Uniti out, Michael interrupted. Marcus, you've been better to us in 6 months than those men ever were. You treat Mom with respect. You've taught us what it means to work hard and be proud of what we build. You've given us a home. If you married Mom, Emma added practically, you'd have legal rights as our stepfather. They couldn't touch us. And more than that. She looked at her mother with a tender smile. We see how you look at each other when you think no one's watching. Marcus felt his face heat. He'd been careful, so careful not to overstep, not to make Sarah uncomfortable. But the children were right. Somewhere along the way, respect had turned to admiration, admiration to affection, and affection to something deeper. It's not that simple, Sarah said quietly, but her eyes met Marcus's across the room, and he saw the question there. Why not? Lily piped up, and suddenly all the children were talking at once, listing reasons why Marcus and Sarah should get married, from practical matters like legal protection to more heartfelt observations about how happy they'd all been, how this felt like a real family. Please, little Grace climbed into Marcus's lap, her small hand patting his weathered cheek. Marry our mother. Then you can be our real daddy, not just our friend. Marcus looked at Sarah over Grace's head. They make a compelling argument. Sarah laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. They certainly do. Then more seriously, but Marcus, I won't trap you into this. You've already done more than anyone could ask. He set Grace gently aside and crossed to where Sarah sat, kneeling before her so they were eye to eye. Sarah Thornton, I'm a stubborn old rancher who's not good with fancy words. But these past 6 months have been the best of my life. This house is finally a home. I wake up with purpose. I go to bed grateful. And somewhere along the way, I fell completely in love with you and your incredible children. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. I thought I was the only one feeling this way. I thought I was crazy for falling for the man who saved us. Is that a yes? Emma called out impatiently. Sarah laughed through her tears and nodded. Yes. Yes, if Marcus is sure. I've never been more sure of anything, Marcus said, pulling her into his arms while the children erupted in cheers. They married a month later in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with all 7 children standing up with them. Sarah's brothers tried one last time to interfere, but the legal adoption papers were already being processed. Marcus Cole was officially becoming the father of 7. As the sun set on their wedding day, Marcus stood on the porch watching his children, and they were his children now, truly, playing in the yard while Sarah stood beside him, her hand in his. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing us. For seeing me. For being the man my children begged me to marry. Marcus smiled and pulled her close. Thank them for being smart enough to know what I was too scared to ask for myself. The lonely rancher wasn't he lonely anymore. He had a wife he adored, 7 children who filled his days with purpose and joy, and a ranch that finally felt complete. Sometimes the best families he'd learned weren't born. They were built, one act of courage and kindness at a time.